This web series is spearheaded by the Grey Willows Resistance. More on that at the end of this broadcast. Meanwhile, here's your weekly audio series, Inalienable Paradise, hosted by John Wishes. In this pursuit of the goal of this web series to solve in little ways the details of some of the biggest universal problems that face humanity, I can't help but think of Eva Gore-Booth. Born on the 22nd of May, 1870, she was a notable Irish poet and women's suffragist. The reason I think of her so much when it comes to this project is from a little section of Wikipedia on her Wikipedia page. Perhaps the reason she is so relevant to the theme and unifying agent of this web series is found on a tiny section of her Wikipedia page, which states as follows. Eva was troubled by the stark contrast between her family's privileged life and the poverty outside. Lissadell, particularly during the winter of the Irish famine, 1870, when starving tenants would come to the house begging for food and clothing. Esther Roper later remarked that Eva was haunted by the suffering of the world and had a curious feeling of responsibility for its inequalities and injustices. And I have that same conviction, except 200 years later. I think the best elaboration I could find on this wonderful conviction I found from another person is from the web blog of Keith Shorrocks Johnson, titled Eva Gore-Booth, A Curious Feeling of Responsibility for the World's Inequalities and Injustices. I will now orate this. I have sort of fallen in love with a lesbian, feminist, universal socialist, aristocratic, one-time pit-brow lass who was an activist agitator based in working-class Manchester towards the end of the 19th century, but who was born and brought up in idyllic circumstances in a grand country house called Lissadell, within sight of that most romantic of Irish mountains, Benbullen in County Sligo. The object of my affections is Eva Gore-Booth, 1870 to 1926. Now quite apart from embodying a raft of contradictions, Eva was a consummate shift-stirrer who loved with reckless abandon, was adored in return, and who liked to write poetry with a bit of bite. Despite the best efforts of the much lionized Irish poet William Butler Yeats, Eva survived being likened in her youth to a young gazelle. In memory of Eva Gore-Booth and Con Martsiewicz. The light of evening, Lissadell. Great windows open to the south. Two girls in silk kimonos, both beautiful, one a gazelle. Having met her henceforth lifelong companion, Esther Roper, in Italy in 1896, she became a feminist radical and settled in smoky, grimy Rusholme, Manchester, devoting herself to the cause of underdogs of all varieties, but especially those of the female gender. For example, in 1913, she worked for a brief spell as a pit brow lass at one of the Lancashire coalfield mines. Pit brow lasses sorted the stones out of the coal that had been brought to the surface over long hours for very little money. They were the occupational descendants of the coal industry, women and girls who had worked underground until the Mines and Collieries Act of 1842 was passed. It's not work for a gazelle. For more on the links between working class solidarity, feminism, suffragism, and radicalism in the 19th and early 20th century Manchester and Salford, see herstoria.com. But Eva found true love with Esther. Esther remarked that Eva was, quote-unquote, haunted by the suffering of the world and had a curious feeling of responsibility for its inequalities and injustices. And one of Eva's sisters wrote of Esther and their relationship, "The more one knows her, the more one loves her, and I feel so glad Eva and she were together, and so thankful that her love was with Eva to the end." Their joint epitaph was, "Life that is love is God," a quote from the poet Sappho. Now, I very much like bold, free-thinking people who are haunted by a responsibility to right inequalities and injustices, and I had to have a look at some of Eva's poetry. How about this? The Eternal Rebel, poem by Eva Gore-Booth. The phantoms flit before our dazzled eyes, glory and honor, wrath and righteousness. The aged phantoms in their blood-stained dress, vultures that fill the world with ravenous cries, swarming about the rock where, chained apart, in age-long pain, Prometheus finds no rest. From the divine flame burning in his breast, and vultures tearing at a human heart. Not yet the blessed hours on golden wings bring to the crucified their sure relief. Deeper and deeper grows the ancient grief, blackest of all intolerable things. Eternal rebel, sad and old and blind, bound with a chain, enslaved by every one of the dark gods who hide the summer sun. Yet art thou still the Savior of mankind. Free soul of fire, break down their chains and bars, drive out those unclean phantoms of the brain, till every living thing be friends again, and our lost earth true comrade to the stars. Now I kind of long for the liberty to recast the poem as Promethea, but that's not really my province, so I'll just add a few more poems. The Anti-Suffragist, poem by Eva Gore-Booth. The princess in her world-old tower pined, a prisoner brazen-caged without a gleam of sunlight or a window full of wind. She lived but in a long, lamp-lighted dream. They brought her forth at last when she was old. The sunlight on her balanced hair was shed, too late to turn its silver into gold. "Ah, shield me from this brazen glare," she said. There is no age, poem by Eva Gore-Booth. There is no age, this darkness and decay is by a radiant spirit cast aside, young with the ageless youth that yesterday bent to the yoke of flesh immortal pride. What thou in time of thunder and black cloud, the spirit of the innermost recedes into the depths of being stormy browed, obscured by a long life of dreams and deeds. There is no age, the swiftly passing hour that measures out our days of pilgrimage and breaks the heart of every summer flower, shall find again in the child's soul and the sage. There is no age, for youth is the divine, and the white radiance of the timeless soul burns like a silver lamp in that dark shrine. What is the tired pilgrim's ultimate goal? We shall be changed. From Poems of Eva Gore-Booth, complete edition. 1929. The snake weed and geranium flower nod in the scented sunshine blithe. Soon finished is their little hour. They fall beneath the scythe. The purple monkshood, fine and tall, the white and golden daisies gay, down amongst broken grasses fall, and wither into hay. Blue gentian and frail columbine, no man shall ever mow, their delicate bright dreams divine, God gathered long ago. The message: be young at heart. Get stuck into righting wrongs and keeping the bastards honest, and enjoy the light before the scythe gets you. As for that prig of a story-toff Yeats and his summation, I know not what the younger dreams, some vague utopia, and she seems, when withered old and skeleton gaunt, an image of such politics. I will provide a link to this webpage that I have recited for this episode in the link below. I hope you sincerely enjoyed this, and I will just make a side note that it is very late at night as I am recording this, so please forgive me if I made a few speech slurs and didn't pronounce some of the words accurately. Thank you very much for tuning in. Keep shining, keep smiling, always. I am in the process of starting a guerrilla movement called Grey Willow's Resistance, dedicated to protecting disabled people from violence and abuse. Whenever an act of abuse or violence is committed on a disabled person or someone is attacked over something they can't control, it is a member's responsibility to apprehend the perpetrator immediately, whether legal, institutional, workplace, school, etc. This is a very loose movement. All you have to do is defend someone who is getting attacked or oppressed over their disability and share your story on the internet with the tag Grey Willows or Grey Willows Resistance, symbolizing the vital importance of understanding the differences and barely distinguishable fallibilities that each individual possesses. This is all founded on the quote by Charles Bukowski below. You begin saving the world by saving one man at a time. All else is grandiose romanticism or politics.